I'm Alveda King. This film explores the action of abortion and resulting consequences. You will hear personal, real-life testimonies and expert commentary as we go on this journey to explore what happens in the abortion industry and how lives are impacted.
U.S. Senate report states, physicians, biologists, and other scientists agree that conception marks the beginning of the life of a human being, a being that is alive and is a member of the human species. There is an overwhelming agreement on this point in countless medical, biological, and scientific writings.
You have to remember that I then was in the abortion clinic telling other women that it was a blood clot, yet going back in the back room to make sure all the body parts were there as early as 6 weeks.
I felt them taking parts out of my body. You know, I've spent the better part of 20 years trying not to remember that, but I do.
We used a script designed to overcome every single objection. That's what sales is. Overcome the objection and you get the order, in this case, the abortion. And when she calls, the first question is reassure. And so the girl confesses, I think I may be pregnant, and the counselor, who's really a telemarketer, that's all they're trained to do, sell over the telephone, but we call them counselors, says, we can take care of your problem, no one needs to know. And then the first question, what's the first day of your last normal period? And the next question is this good news or bad news? If it were good news, she would not be calling an abortion clinic. It's bad news. And when she replies bad news, this counselor moves right in because now she wants to identify the fear, to use it to reaffirm that abortion decision anytime that girl moves away. And if she says, well, maybe I need to think about this, your parents will kill you, you'll have to miss drill team, the abortion is sold.
Where's the choice when only one option is offered? That's an essential fallacy in the woman's so-called right to choose. In most cases, it's not a choice at all. A decision is reached without all the facts or based on misinformation. Other options are not presented, and a deadly course of action is forced on a woman.
I had this one lady that called me one afternoon, and she said that she wanted to make an appointment for her daughter to come in and have an abortion. I said, does she want to have the abortion? Well, you know, it's not her choice.
So I went to a counselor, a Christian counselor, and she kept saying I needed to have an abortion and then this was not a good thing for me to do and it wasn't going to be good for my kids. All of a sudden, everybody's like, you can't do this, you can't do this, you don't want to do this is not good for the kids, this is not good for you.
Through conversations with him pushing the abortion, and then that kind of frustrated me at some point. I just felt like he didn't care about me, that he was just thinking about, like, let's fix this. That's exactly his words. We need to fix this.
But I was in fear and in crisis, and at that point that I felt like I had no choice.
The stories of the boyfriend saying, I'll give you the $300 and our relationship will continue if you have the abortion. If you choose to keep the baby, there's the door.
Absolutely do not think that my choice was a choice. I think it was, like I said before, I think it felt like an ultimatum.
They're all screaming at me. It felt like they were screaming at me. They were constantly insisting, you've got to kill him, you've got to abort him, you can't do this, you've got to go to the clinic, you've got to hurry up. Every week that you wait is making it worse. Go, 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 go. And I finally couldn't take all of their pressure.
Too often, through coercion, the woman goes on to have an abortion, convinced she's in trouble and that the procedure will get her out of it. Unfortunately, the trouble has only just begun. The physical and emotional consequences of her decision are often devastating.
We remembered what our girlfriends looked like before and after.
Because abortion goes to the core of who we are as women. And the fact that we are involved in nurturing life, that an abortion experience really does leave a mark.
She'd say, well, I'm pretty sure that you have, post-traumatic stress disorder from the abortion that you had when you were 14. And I said, yeah, no, that's not what it is. I always thought, I have major depression, or I'm bipolar, or all these other things that other doctors had diagnosed me. It was definitely my abortion that had caused serious emotional trauma for so long.
I know a lot of women have suffered from having nightmares, hearing babies crying in the night, inability to bond with living children.
The fear of being found out What if people knew what you've done? When people think you're a godly woman, but they have no idea that you've killed 4 people. Grief and the shame just about buried me at times.
After I left there and went home, I guess it was the hormones or whatnot set in, and just the emotions, the reality of what all happened. And I remember just curling in a corner and pulling out my hair and just thinking, I can't believe I had done this.
Rather than just go through a 9-month crisis pregnancy, that I've gone through about 20 years of hell on earth.
Some studies have indicated that teenagers who have an abortion are up to 6 times more likely to take their own lives within a year of having terminated their pregnancies. Many more women contemplate and even try suicide in an attempt to end the pain that they feel. True numbers may never be accurately reported, but suicides and attempted suicides among women who've undergone abortion are a reality the other side does not want to admit.
I figured the only way to escape the torment was to take my own life. And being the chicken that I was, I got about as high as I could, and I got in my bathtub filled with water. And with a razor blade, I cut my wrist. And I began to just lie there and watch the water in the tub turn red.
It wasn't something that was happening consciously that I could say, man, I'm really sad that I had the abortion, so I'm going to use these drugs. It was just that deep, empty, hopeless feeling that there was nothing worth living for, and, you know, plotting how I was going to end my life so many times.
We had a 12-year-old. She came in chewing her gum and looked so carefree. She had her abortion. She came back 2 weeks later for her checkup, opened the door, and she was in there. She'd brought in a piece of glass and slitting her wrist. 12 years old.
But we all have that moment where we realize that we are moms and we killed our children.
Warnings are rarely offered. Women are seldom told the full story of what they're getting into when they authorize an abortionist to kill the baby inside of them. Even if the known consequences and after effects like breast cancer, barrenness, and other female trauma, even if it only impacts half the women or a quarter of the women, wouldn't it be better to let them know what they might suffer from their choice? Wouldn't it still be wise to let them know every potential risk? Why not a warning on something so life-changing, so life-threatening as an abortion?
I wasn't in for all of that abortion. Somebody else was in there with him. But I went in toward the end, and I'd never seen that much blood. I mean, you know, just blood everywhere. And we put her in the recovery room, and she just filled the bed. And we changed the bed a couple of times, and her blood pressure was erratic. And the doctor left. At 10 o'clock, the boyfriend said, look, if there's anything happens, I'll call you immediately. And at 4:30, he called the doctor, and he said, put her in a tub of hot water. And when he did, the last little bit of blood in her body ran out. And he called me about 6 and said, she's dead.
Many women become infertile. They suffer from other problems with their female organs and end up having to have complete hysterectomies. One of our ladies, the power of the suction machine from the abortion was so severe that it caused her fallopian tubes to collapse, and she was never able to have children.
Abortion is surgery and carries significant risks. Unlike surgeries that will save a life or relieve suffering, abortion is an elective surgery of convenience that is rarely performed to save the life of the mother.
We had one girl, 22 years old, a model, who danced in, jumped up on the table, laughed at the doctor that she didn't wear underwear. She was 22 weeks pregnant. We put her on the table. Now, there's a maneuver called the Hansen's maneuver. Now, the doctor may do it himself, or someone may do it, but I did it for the big baby, 2 of our big baby abortionists. I held the babies, and you say the head's here, the feet are here, the buttocks are here, and you gently push the baby down into the instruments. And the first time this doctor went in, he pulled out omentum. That's the lining to the intestines. He literally perforated her uterus and was pulling her bowel out her uterus with the very first time he went in with the instruments. And the second time he went in, he pulled out her bowel and he pushed it back in, woke the woman up, put her in my car, because it's terrible advertisement to think about having an ambulance in front of an abortion clinic. And we didn't take her to the hospital nearest us. We didn't take her to the hospital that would take the best care of her. We took her across town to a hospital that would help us cover up what we'd done. And this surgeon is taking this girl who has a perfectly complete baby inside her with her bowel pulled out her vagina upstairs to the operating room. 7 doctors operated on that baby, on that girl. They had to do a colostomy to resection her bowel to empty into this bag. They pulled the baby out. He rolled it into the disposable drapes and put it into the incinerator at the hospital.
In Roe, the court made the issue of abortion a decision between a woman and her doctor. The real outcome of Roe is that deciding whether to keep the baby or terminate its life in the vast majority of cases is left up to the woman in crisis in consultation with a person who earns a living by selling abortions. If helping women were at the heart of the abortion industry, the so-called service of ending the baby's life could be offered for far less money than is typically charged. The clinic could remain in business and still realize a profit. But that's not it. The abortionist and the abortionist clinic thrive by taking advantage of women in crisis.
Very quickly, it was no longer about selling abortions to other women, it was about money. I saw the potential to make great money. I answered the phone at home at night so we wouldn't miss an abortion. But she is allowed to watch her pregnancy test turn positive or negative, and they would point to a chart on the wall and say, this is a positive test and this is a negative test, and if it's positive, we trained our people to reach over and grab the bony part of her elbow and squeeze. And you see, she's confused, she's hurting, she's just gotten this news that she's pregnant, and she's upset. So you grab the bony part of her elbow and squeeze to get her attention and say, if you have your money, we can take care of this right now.
They did a pregnancy test. They said it was positive, and they asked me, did I have the money?
They told me if I didn't have it that day that I would have to come back and it would cost more money because I was right at the 13-week point.
You see, we knew if she went home and talked about it, her support system might help her and might tell her abortion wasn't the answer, but if she just did it right then, it was taken care of. But a certain percentage of those pregnancy tests are negative. They're not all positive. So if her test was negative, we had a different sales technique. We said, this test is negative, but you know, this test is not sensitive enough to pick up a very early pregnancy. You could still be pregnant and this test would be negative, and you want to know for sure today, don't you? And she would say yes, and we'd say, okay, we have another test we can do. We will just do this sonogram. And we put her on that table as I could put any man, woman, or child on that table. And I could find a pregnancy. You see, all you have to do is find a blob, and everyone's abdomen has a blob. And this girl doesn't know what a pregnant uterus looks like versus a negative one, so you just find a little blob in the abdomen. You flip it around and say, see there it is, you're pregnant. She's shocked. You grab the bony part of her elbow and say, if you have your money, we can just take care of it today.
I mean, the studies are there that shows that abortion is bad for women's health, emotional, physical health. But yet those studies keep getting stifled. They keep getting questioned. They keep getting undermined because of the fact that there is a great deal of money made in the abortion industry.
Abortion has far-reaching consequences that those profiting from it don't want women to know. At a time when we expect our government to ensure our safety, why has the government been so slow to regulate an industry that has harmed untold numbers of their patients?
Abortion steals the destiny of not only women, but of the men who participate, the men who've lost children, of their families. It destroys relationships.
A man had come to our table. I had an exhibit booth, and I was explaining to him the work that we do, and he looks up at me and tears are streaming down his face, and he was sobbing like a baby, and he says, it's been 35 years, and I still hurt every day from it.
We can't be silent anymore. Millions of women's lives have been devastated, and the fathers, we just write them off. They're just forgotten about.
But I'm telling you, the multitudes of people that have been hurt by abortion, it's just unfathomable.
With Roe, the Supreme Court took away from the states the right to restrict abortions within their own jurisdictions, but it was thought that the states would regulate the clinics that performed the procedure. The truth is, for years, they were left alone. The dirty back alley abortionists simply moved into the open without cleaning up their operations. This was a highly profitable business, and the safety of women was seldom a factor when it came to the bottom line.
You know, we were doing 20, 30 abortions an hour if we could, at least 20. We had 21 sets of instruments. That's all we had. So we couldn't possibly bring those instruments out, clean them, sterilize them, bring the temperature up in the sterilizer and then 20 minutes sterilization, and then cool them down.
Well, yeah, I mean, we had an infection rate of about 75%, you know, but that was just from unsterilized equipment.
Our complication rate at the end of my time, last 18 months, was when about 1 out of every 500 had a major life-changing surgery or died. We had 1 woman die. But because there are no real statistics, and if you can cover it up, you don't report it, and none of ours were ever reported. So we don't really know. The big hospital in Dallas will tell you, the doctors will tell you that they saw botched abortions or see botched abortions all the time. One of the reasons we were able to regulate the abortion clinics in Texas was because of the bad abortionists that had been reported. I mean, one girl died and they went in to examine the clinic and they were using rusted instruments and had no sterilizer and no hot water.
The life of the woman who decides to abort her baby will never be the same. There will never be a day when that decision won't affect her in some way, physically, emotionally, or spiritually. The most promising choice is the decision that favors life, the decision to carry the baby to term. In virtually every community all across the United States, there are organizations and people willing to help for the sake of a life that deserves to flourish. Organizations and people who are not driven by the desire to make money off of the despair of others. These are loving people who truly desire to help the woman in crisis make a choice, the right choice.
And every day I think about what could have been. What could have been if I had my baby.
Would have been somebody who would have changed the dynamic of our family. And the relationships that they would have created would have changed everyone that they interacted with. But they're not here.
They just don't know about the resources and they're in complete despair. So we need to be there to love them and to show them that we care for them and to get them the help they need.
So if there's a woman that's considering abortion, that to not buy that lie, that they will miss the greatest blessing of their life.
Everyone that had an abortion was encouraging me not to have an abortion, basically telling me to learn from their mistake, learn from them that it's not what I need to do.
Once you heal from that abortion, all of those issues that were in your life evaporate, they go away, they get resolved.
When I share about what I've done, it's with the hope that I can reach one woman with the truth about abortion so she will not make the same choice I did. That she will not buy the lie.
Abortion is really, to me, the ultimate exploitation of women. And none of that is being discussed, because the reality is once it starts being discussed and we really blow the lid off of this issue, and the truth has really come out about what abortion does to women, let alone the unborn baby, our dead babies, it will be over.
Sadly, I think if at any time one of their fathers had asked me not to abort them, I would have definitely kept that baby.